There are areas that need to be shored up. So we need to continue to work on logistics as an example. We need to continue to work intelligence systems. We need to continue to work on the casualty evacuation system and medevac. Need to continue to work on rotary wing and fixed wing aviation. Need to continue to work on command and control. The tactical capabilities that were demonstrated easily by the Afghan security forces throughout the entire summer across the entire country, they achieved tactical overmatch against their enemy. But tactical wins an army does not make. So they've got to build a self-sustaining force that can go beyond 2014. We've got to cement those systems into place, and that's going to take a bit longer.
This is a decisive year. Some would say it's a tipping point, a turning point.
Absolutely, we're definitely at a strategic turning point. So the big condition, I came here 02-03 timeframe. At that point, I would say Kabul looked something along the lines of what you might have seen from World War II photos of German cities that were bombed out. So it was a shell of a city. No health care, no education systems, no communication systems, roads were a mess, and so on and so forth. And there was no police force, there was no army, there were no security forces, and we, United States forces, along with some of our allied partners, were in fact fighting the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and all of the various others, and they, as you know from the story, the history of it, got shattered, and then they withdrew to a sanctuary, and then they reconstituted and rebuilt themselves. But there wasn't much here. So what do you have today? You've got an army and a police force that's almost 352,000 strong, 347,000 as of this morning. You've got units that are capable, and they have large capacity, they're cohesive, they're competent, they're reasonably well led, they're well equipped and reasonably well trained. So that's the security force piece of it. But you've got a whole lot of other things that have happened. You've got health care, where the average age has gone from 42 to 56 for a male in Afghanistan. So when I showed up, 42 was the average age of an Afghan male. Today it's 56. It took London and Paris 120 years to do that. With help from the outside, international community, this country made that leap in life expectancy in a mere 12 years.
So let me ask you, sir, what is the greatest threat at this time?
Uncertainty is a big one, psychological uncertainty of the future. In terms of armed threat, the combination of the enemies of Afghanistan, the Haqqani, and the Taliban collectively clearly are out there doing terrorist actions, etc. It's clear, and it's unambiguous, that the Afghan security forces can handle the armed threat, provided that there is continued support for the Afghan security forces in the years to come. So if they have that support, they'll be able to hold the line. But the biggest threat is probably the uncertainty in the minds of the Afghan people and their leaders about the future and about what is going to happen, whether or not the international community will be there or not.
What will the NATO presence, the international community presence, what will it look like?
Well, we don't know yet in terms of, because of national level decisions and the NATO decisions have not yet been made. The bilateral security agreement with the United States and the NATO SOFA agreement with all of the other allied partners in NATO have not yet been signed. So final decisions on what we look like is unknown at this time. We don't know the exact structure of the numbers and so on and so forth. That's all under consideration. It's all being looked at. Courses of action are being analyzed, and decisions will get made here, I'm sure, in the near future.
So if you had a wish list, what would you like it to look like?
I think that continued support, continued international support for the government of Afghanistan and the Afghan security forces are going to be necessary in order to achieve our objectives and to achieve NATO objectives and to achieve the objectives set out by the government of Afghanistan relative to the enemies of Afghanistan. So all wars come to an end. At some point in the future, this one too will end. But we want it to end on favorable terms for the people of Afghanistan, the government, and in our own interests, in NATO and U.S. interests. That's going to require continued work in the future.
Sir, you're in a position as you travel around the country to get an idea of what the reactions from Afghans are like to our withdrawal, to our leaving.
Leaving is a relative term. It sounds absolutely like we're leaving. Those decisions have been made on what the enduring presence or the continued presence of international forces, not just American, but our 50 other nations that are in NATO. The Afghan people have spoken through the lawyer Jirga. And the Afghan leaders that I run into, and it's quite a few over the travels throughout Afghanistan, are overwhelmingly in favor of a continued international presence. It's unambiguous. It's 80s to 90 percentiles. So it's significant, overwhelming, it's broad, and it's deep. They want the international community to continue support both financially and with selected military enablers. They're not asking us to fight. They're not asking us to stand in the trench line, fix bayonets, and fight the Taliban. That's not what they want us to do. They just want our help. They will do the fighting. They did the fighting in 2013. They're fighting for their own country. Not a single unit across the entire country over some pretty tough fighting over the summer. This is fundamentally a Muslim-on-Muslim fight. This is radical jihadists who have perverted Islam for their own ideological and political ends against the people of Afghanistan represented by their security forces. That's what's fighting right now. Do we still take casualties? Yes, we do. Are we still engaged in the fight? We provide enablers, we provide advisors, but fundamentally, this is a fight now between the Afghan people and the enemies of Afghanistan. All they want us to do is continue to help them in the future.
So what happens if the security agreement doesn't go forward?
Well, we don't know yet because we're waiting to see if it's signed. So if there's no BSA between the United States and Afghanistan, then the United States will have no legal basis to remain here because it's their country, they're a sovereign nation, and we will have to do the will of the sovereign nation. So, and that's been said publicly by senior leaders in the United States. So, but on the flip side, I'm personally confident that optimistic, cautiously optimistic, shall we say, something like that, that you know, you're going to get a BSA and a NATO SOFA, and then immediately following that, you're going to have elections for the first time in Afghanistan history, and you'll have a peaceful transition of power. So you'll have a political transition. We had a security transition this past summer, and now you're about to have a political transition. And in combination, that series of political military events, all in combination, I think that will be a huge and significant strategic change of momentum in favor of the people and the government of Afghanistan, and it will be the death knell for the Taliban. And the Taliban are aware of that. They're deathly afraid of a BSA, they're deathly afraid of NATO SOFAs, and they're deathly afraid of a free and fair election.
Is that why they continue to launch attacks, even though they know that we are reducing our presence?
Of course. No, they want to, their objectives, which they set out a year ago this month for the summer of 2013, they didn't meet them. They had strategic objectives, but in short, they want to re-seize power in Kabul. They want to reestablish an Islamic caliphate in the country of Afghanistan. And they want to establish this as a radical Islamic regime, which is exactly what it was pre-9/11. And our objectives are to prevent Afghanistan from ever again becoming a platform for terrorists to strike the United States and murder 3,000 civilians. The Taliban right now don't have the popularity. They come in routinely at polling and a variety of other methods at significantly less than 20%. They're coming in at 10%, 8%, 9%, 12%, depends on the poll, depends on the area. But low polling numbers, so they're not politically popular. And there's not an insurgency in the history of warfare that's ever taken power unless they had some political base. They have no political platform, they don't know how to build. All they know how to do is terrorize, murder, kill, and destroy. The people of Afghanistan recognize that, and they do not want to try the Taliban on again, and they're asking for international support to prevent the Taliban from ever coming back.
What is the main thrust of your efforts at this time?
Right now, we shifted gears last summer where we are 100% in the security force assistant and advisory role with the Afghan security forces, and that's from ministerial level all the way down to unit level. Secondly, we are focusing in our advisory efforts, we're focusing in on building institutions at the higher levels, the ministries, and then at the tactical and operational level, we're focusing in on command and control, logistics, medical, combined arms integration, training and how you train a force in order to sustain itself over time, and counter-IED, force protection. It's all the systems that wrap around those units. That's what we're focusing our advisory effort on.
How do you gauge success?
I think there's a couple of, at the very strategic level, is Afghanistan no longer a platform for terrorists to strike at the United States and its vital national security interests, to include the capitals of Europe. If that is the case, then that is the fundamental reason why we came here to begin with. Now, the method that we try to achieve that end state is to try to establish a stable Afghanistan, and it's relative. The vehicle by which we're doing that, the way we're doing that, is by building up the Afghan security forces. So the Afghan security forces become then a shield behind which the economy, the health system, the education system, etc., can in fact be developed, and there's an interrelationship between the two. So as those systems are developed, the society becomes more stable. We're not going to create a Western country, nor are we trying to. We just want the Afghan society to stabilize so that there's no longer the host to international terrorists that it was pre-9/11.
How do you compare Afghan leadership to ours?
There's differences in skill sets, for sure. There are cultural differences, for sure. We come from a society that is in a very advanced Western industrialized society that has had literally hundreds of years of development to produce something called the United States Army or the United States Navy or the United States Air Force. Very highly advanced, technologically oriented militaries that are led by people who have grown up in those type of systems. Here in Afghanistan, you've got leaders that have grown up in a different society. So technologies that are quite advanced and quite complicated are not as easy to assimilate into their military as it is, for example, into a Western European or U.S. military. Culturally, there's differences. They come from a variety of ethnic groups and tribes, etc. And this society, because of the mountains, the tribes, the language, the linguistic groups, and so on and so forth, was not a unified whole. However, merging them together in units, for example, requires a unique style of leadership on the part of their battalion brigade commanders in order to overcome some of these ethnic differences, these language differences, some of these tribal differences. So you'll get at the leadership Pashtun, you'll get Tajik, you'll get Hazara leaders that are skilled in bringing together a variety of people from a multicultural background. You've got educational differences. You'll see almost 100% of the officer corps in the United States military has gone to college, have university degrees. You don't get that level of education, but what you do get is you get a lot of very hard-nosed, very tough fighters that are leaders of small units, and they're willing to close with and destroy the enemy at close range, and they do it on a day-in and day basis. So they may not have PhDs and they may not have master's degrees, but they know how to fight. And that's not to say we don't, but they know how to fight in a way that is slightly different than we know how to fight.
Let's talk about the other half of the population, the women. We have empowered them. We have given them a sense of self-worth. What happens to the women when we are drawing down?
Well, I think there's a cultural, societal issue in Afghanistan with respect to women. I think women have come a long way in Afghanistan in the 12 years since the end of the Taliban rule. And I think the women of Afghanistan clearly recognize that. In fact, according to the polling and other sources, the women of Afghanistan are probably the strongest single cohesive entity that opposes the return of the Taliban. They do not want the Taliban back. Women have made a lot of strides in the last 12 years, and they want to continue to make those strides. Are they at the same levels that you'll see women in America or Western Europe? No, not yet. But those strides have been made. They know it. Fields have been opened up to them that were previously closed. And I think the women of Afghanistan, if we continue to stick with our plan to assist the government and the army, I think that the women of Afghanistan have a much brighter future than they would ever have under the Taliban.
You made reference to this earlier. Afghanistan is now considered a unified country?
Afghanistan, historically, you've got geography that's compartmented. So you've got mountains and valleys. Languages. If you look at Nuristan, there's 30 languages that are spoken just in the province of Nuristan. There are people who live in valleys that have never literally been outside their valleys. So in 12 years, 12,000 miles of road have been built. So what does that mean? That means that an agriculturally based society that lives in valleys and mountains can get to the next valley and deliver their grapes and their apples and their onions and rice, etc. So you begin this process of breaking down the compartments, the fragmentation. If you look at international airlines, 12 years ago, 0. Today, 60. If you look at the internet, huge internet usage now, computers and access to the internet inside Afghanistan. Almost everybody has a cell phone. So everybody's connected to each other. So this connectivity is happening 10 million Afghans are in school. It's only 30 million people in this country. A third of the country is in grammar school, high school, or college. What does that mean? You are exposing people to knowledge, communications, roads, airlines, internet, phones, and you're seeing the bonds and the sinews of a connected society take hold, which has not happened before here. It has happened elsewhere in many other countries. It's happened throughout history. It is happening as we speak right now. And we will see that unfold in the years to come, where you'll see a country and that will contribute to its stability.
We've been here 12, 13 years now. We've made considerable investment, both in money and in blood. As you look around, what will be our legacy?
I think the United States of America, I think the United States military, the United States Army has done a tremendous amount of good in the country of Afghanistan, for the people of Afghanistan, but most importantly for our own country. It was from these valleys and these training camps that al-Qaeda terrorists were trained. They attacked our country and they murdered 3,000 American citizens. That hasn't happened since, and if we're successful, it'll never happen again.